Welcome to the Blood Brothers podcast. Tonight we are joined by myself, Sean Coleman, Mr. Rob Parker and Mr. Chris MacDonald.
Hello.
And we are joined in our guest author spot by the amazing Will Dean, author of the Tuva Moodyson Mysteries and the amazing Last Thing to Burn.
Woohoo!
Hi.
Hello. It is very good to be with you guys. Thank you for having me.
It's lovely to have you here. I know we've sort of scheduled and rescheduled a couple of times, but I'm very glad that we've managed to do this because I think when we got the proof of Last Thing to Burn, I opened it and read the first, thinking I'll read the first page and see where we're at, because it's just come through the door and there's other things on the list. And then next thing I knew, the coffee was cold and I was several chapters in and going, right, I can't stop reading this nonsense. And it's amazing. It's heartbreaking and horrid and beautiful all at the same time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I just to leap off that, I think this book is almost an absurd achievement. It's super. And it was one of the most exciting moments of last year when it landed on my doorstep. Like, oh my God, I've got, and so yeah, it was very much a question of you read a couple of pages and that's it. Say goodbye to your free time because that's it. So yeah, and I'd be very, it's come out at such a point where, because it's been out 4 weeks now, something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Something
4
like
weeks.
that, yeah. And well, how's that 4 weeks been for you?
It's been good. I mean, it's been pretty intense. I've done a lot of like midnight interviews with Australia and New Zealand and things like that, and then getting up early in the morning to do other interviews and stuff. But it's been good. I mean, I still think I'm lucky to be published, and it's a privilege to talk about my stories that I make up in my head. Fundamentally, it's like to be able to do what we do. It's great. So it's been lovely to hear the feedback from the readers, of course, and reviewers and stuff. And you never know when you have an idea and you write it down if it's going to resonate with anyone. And this one seems to have done so. I'm pleased with it.
And it's sort of one of those ridiculous questions, really. But where were you? Where was it when you kind of went, "Oh, that's the idea. That's what's happening next. This is what's going to happen. I'm going to write this book."
So sometimes I can't. It's difficult to answer this question, right? But with this book, it's easy. It was 2016, in bed, midnight, and the idea came to me. This image came to me. In my mind's eye, I saw a small farm cottage in the center of a vast farm, a fenland farm, big flat fields. And I saw a woman kind of walking in and out of this little cottage, 2 bedrooms upstairs, 2 rooms downstairs, in and out and around the cottage all day long. But she never went very far away from the cottage on this farm. And I came to understand quite quickly that she wanted to get away. She was desperate to get away from this place. And she could never get far enough away to reach safety. And between midnight and 6 a.m. I had the entire idea of the story, at least in image form, and then I wrote it in 2017.
And was it one of those things that you woke up the next morning and thought, really though, did I really have a really good idea, or was that
I mean, that happens to me a lot.
bunch of art?
That happens to me. I'll write a note on my phone at 3 a.m. and then I'll wake up and it'll just be garbage. Yeah. But with this one, I think I don't know what happened, but at midnight I realized I want to go with this. So I didn't sleep that night at all. I was awake between midnight and 6 a.m. My wife was asleep and I was kind of almost like daydreaming the next scene. And then I was writing a note on my phone and then I was thinking through the next scene, closing my eyes, thinking through the next scene. And like I say, between midnight and 6 a.m. I had kind of visualized the entire story, the entire arc of the story. And then at 6 a.m. I had it. So I knew exactly what I was going to write. All the major scenes. I knew my main character and her background. I knew this farmer, this horrific farmer and his background. And I was then ready to, go and do some research and think about it some more.
So that was 2016. And then when did you push the manuscript out to the world?
So 2016, I'd already sold Dark Pines and Red Snow then. So I was working on the Tuva books. That was my main project. And this was my secret little project that just came at an inconvenient time, as they do. So I was working on it on planes and trains and in hotels at festivals around the
When we could
world.
do all of that stuff.
Exactly, yeah, those good old days. And I didn't tell my agent about it for a while, and then I think I don't know when I gave it to my agent, 2019, and it's a short novel. It's a very intense little book, and I didn't know what she would think of it, if she could sell it or not. And we just got very lucky. People liked it straight away. So it was one of those things where the idea came, and then a lot of thinking, and then a very, very quick first draft, and then years of playing with the language. Like I wanted to perfect Len's dialogue, his East Midlands dialect, which is my childhood dialect, my family's dialect now. I wanted to get that right so it's authentic and strong, but not too thick that it's unreadable. So I tinkered with that a lot. And then, yeah, and now it's out there in the world. So it's been like 2016 to 2021, the whole thing.
Wow. That's when you kind of look at it, you go, that's long, but so short for something to go from inception to publication.
I mean, that's how it feels now. And like, I'm going to, I write my book that I need to write each year, whether that's a standalone or a Tuva novel, but I'm very open to other ideas coming in to my head. And if I have an idea for something else in a different genre or something else completely, I will go with it and then find the time to kind of get the first draft out, even if it doesn't get published for 10 years, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That's the great thing about stories. I don't think you can be too businesslike about it. I mean, you have to some extent, but when something comes, you just have to run with it.
Yeah, I think you can sort of apply a certain business ethic to series. If you have a fan base and you're doing a sort of one every year kind of deal, but peppering in standalones, you go, well, this one may take 10 years. It may be the best thing I've ever written. It may be utter balls, but we'll see when we get there.
But even I think but even if you have like a children's book idea, it pops in your head. Like I don't think I could write a children's book right now. I think it would be too difficult. I think I have so much respect for that kind of novel, that kind of fiction. But if I had an idea for it, I would go with it. And if it's sold when I was 57, that's fine. It doesn't matter really when it happens.
No, I wrote a children's book. That was the first book I ever wrote, in fact. And it was the most difficult thing I've ever written in my entire life. And there have been some things that have been written, but it was 16 pages.
Okay.
With about 20 words a page. It was the most horrendously difficult thing I've ever written in my life. I love it. I really love it. But I'd never, ever do it again. I couldn't possibly begin to respect enough the art of writing a children's book.
I think that's a really hard industry as well, the children's industry, especially with the pressures from celebrity authors. I think that is such a difficult industry to thrive in. Incidentally, I did the same. I got to submission stage when I was with the children's picture book, and then I was literally in a school doing a talk, and I went past the shelves and I saw it there, like the same title, Ninja Bread Man, and I saw it, and what's they stole my no, and it was just. I just accidentally
just a good title.
ripped the whole thing. So we had to rip the whole thing up. That's it. I've never gone back.
I think, I mean, for me, the idea is that when the idea hits you, just take it and write it. It doesn't matter where it is, or if it's outside of your genre, or it's outside of what any of your people are happy to sell for you. I think if you've got a voice inside you that says, this is an idea, write it down. It's, something may come of it. As you've proved.
What you're known for oftentimes, Will, is the speed of your first draft. When you post that you've done one and the days in which you've done it, it's a head scratcher for me. I don't know how it gets done. But was this different? Was this quicker? I mean, I'm sorry, I'm talking about The Last Thing to Burn. Was this quicker? What was the first draft process like on this one?
It's pretty similar. I've got this very unhealthy process that I don't recommend to anyone. It's not a good idea to do it, but I spend a lot of time visualizing before I write a first draft. So I do put a lot of work in my head, seeing the scenes of the book and understanding the mood and the characters. But then when I write a first draft, this book, I've got this one that you're talking about, The Last Thing to Burn, took 3 weeks. So the whole thing came out of me in 3 weeks. It's quite a short book. And then it took me, then I kind of put it away for about 6 months always. I don't touch it for 6 months, which is not a very commercial thing to do. Like a lot of authors, they're on a tighter schedule than that. But I put it away for 6 months. I want that distance from it. And then I work on it for as long as I think it needs to be worked on. But yeah, the first drafts are very fast. But the actual whole process is not that quick for me. Like I deliver the Tuva books one a year, but they kind of take 3 years to get from idea to publication.
And how were you during that period? Sorry, Sean, I didn't mean to interrupt. During that period, I know when I'm knee deep in a first draft, I'm constant tick. Like I feel ticking all the time, even when I'm not at my desk or there's no pen in my hand, no typing implements or whatever. And so how are you during, because mine's nowhere near as intense as that. How are you as a person during that? Sorry, it's kind of personal. I apologize, but you know what I mean.
That's all right.
Like,
what do you mean? What do you mean by you hear a tick?
No, I feel like I'm always ticking over. Like, so even when I'm sat down and I'm just with the kids, say for example, and my mind is still ticking on this first draft and the next line, the next what could come next, where we are, and I find it very hard to switch off, and I'd like to be a lot more healthy with that. But considering you managed to do this in such a condensed period of time, how do you cope? I mean,
it's very similar. So I have like in my calendar, I'll have like a month set aside for a first draft, maybe a few months ahead of me. So I know roughly when it is, and I'm building up to that point. You know, I'm getting excited about the story. I'm doing my research. I'm daydreaming a lot. I'm thinking about it. And then I know roughly when that first day of that first draft will be, but there's a bit of leeway, a few days either side. And then when I sit down, I'm kind of committed. And that first page, as it is with all of us, it's kind of a leap of faith, right? You hope that voice of that character is going to come out organically and it's going to feel real. And then I'm away and I write a chapter in the morning, like a scene in the morning, a scene in the afternoon. But like you, I'm constantly thinking about the next scene and I'm constantly kind of in that world. So with the Tuva Moodyson novels, I'm constantly in small town Gavrik in central Sweden. And with the standalones, with this one, I'm constantly in the fens in this horrible little claustrophobic farm cottage. I'm there. I'm walking around. I'm standing in the corner watching these two and their interactions. I'm watching her cook the sausages in a particular way. I'm seeing all that. And I'm thinking about the next scene. And then when I sit down, I'm ready to write it. And I write, 2 chapters a day, non-stop, for however long it takes until I finish the book. I don't have like a word count target or anything like that. I don't look at the word count. I need a scene in the morning and a scene in the afternoon, pretty much.
Amazing. I love hearing about process. It fascinates me, and that's you're almost strict with yourself, aren't you? You're a very strict process with.
I don't know. I wouldn't say it's strict because that implies some kind of discipline and some kind of conscious decision. This is more. I do this because I'm terrified still. And I think I always will be. First draft, empty Word doc on my 11-year-old compact. I'm terrified. Like there's nothing there, and something has to get from here, from my brain to the laptop, without losing too much of itself. And it's just hard. Like it's an impossible thing to do. I've never achieved it. Something always gets lost in that transit, and it's a terrifying thing. It's a crazy thing that we all do. It's terrifying, and I do it so fast because I'm worried that I'm going to go off on a tangent or I'm going to lose confidence in it.
I think I love that you say that because I think I feel that as well. It's the starting it and getting it from your head onto the page, even though that's in when you try and explain it to somebody who doesn't write, it should be a synapsal thing between brain to finger to key. But that's not how writing works. And I think on my desk, I have this quote by William Goldman, which basically ends with, no matter how diamond bright your ideas are dancing in your brain, on paper, they are earthbound. And it hits me every day. There's that thing that you're like, that's a fucking brilliant idea. And then when you write it down, you're like, that's all right. I mean, I can polish it. And sometimes what happens on paper is better than you thought it was going to be, and sometimes it's just
not so far for me. But one day.
but that's something that you are also known for, Will, is your support of other authors in the community, the writing community, and also authors who are trying to get there. And it can be such it can be just wandering in the dark, can't it, for such a long period of time? And that central message of getting it down, you know, for you, you want to get it down so you don't lose momentum or even faith in yourself almost. Whereas once you've got it down there, you've got it then. No one can take that away from you. You've got it. And then you can do whatever you make it better. But what you can't do is try to get published with something that isn't there. And it's a message that I constantly want to put out there. But that leads back in a very tangential way to all the work you do to try to help other people come along, you know, and get into this. And what inspired you to want to do that? You're one of the most outspoken people out there in trying to help other people. It's amazing.
I don't know. For me, it was just, I had a hard time, like everybody else, getting rejected for many, many years. And most of us don't have any contacts. You know, we don't have a clue of how publishing works or how one agent does. What's the difference between publicity and marketing? And if you're from a background that's not like a privileged London connected kind of background, then it just seems extremely terrifying and otherworldly and unlikely that it's ever going to happen. So I just remember that very vividly, how hard it was getting rejected and thinking, it's never going to happen, is it? Nobody's ever going to actually say, I want to read more of this. And you feel so lonely and kind of isolated, like the odds are so against you, that I just want to, through my YouTube videos and stuff, just give those people in that situation a little bit of hope, a little bit of comfort, because it's so lonely and so tough. And I don't want them to give up, because the truth is, it doesn't matter if it takes 5 years or 25 years to get there. None of that work is wasted. And if you get to the point, if you want to write and be published and for people to read your work, and you get to that point, whenever you get to that point, it's just a wonderful, beautiful thing. And a lot of us, you know, we're thinking about the next book, or we're worried about deadlines or whatever. But the truth is, we're just lucky to be doing this in any way, shape or form. We just, you know, if somebody's reading your work, then that's a beautiful thing.
Amazing.
Definitely. And I think there's so much joy to be got from getting a review from somebody who, you know, the first review you get from somebody you don't actually know, that isn't your mum or your auntie or your godmother. That just goes, wow, I read this and I love it. Or just getting those surprise messages out of the blue on Twitter that says, I've just found your book and I absolutely adore it and thank you. And you're like, whoa, I still can't quite deal with that.
I know. For me, it's like being a kid again, and just like you have an idea that's you're kind of embarrassed of because it's a bit weird, and it's created itself in your imagination. You've written it down, or you've shared it with somebody, and they've connected with it. They see that world that you invented in your own head. It's like, for me, it's like being 8 years old again. It's just a weird and wonderful thing. It
is incredible. And then when people see things in there that you didn't necessarily think you'd put in, but once somebody said it, you go, yeah, that's amazing. It's great that you found that, because that probably is in there, and it does sit. I love it. I love that connection with readers, in that, you know, people will find new things in your books, or get really passionate about certain characters, or feel like they're missing a friend when they put your book down, or, you know, I love that kind of connection, because it's what got me writing in the first place. It's what made me want to tell stories, was just that loving and reading things and seeing my English teachers be so passionate about the things that they'd read and the authors. It's
a nice part of it for sure. But I mean, to be honest, it's not why I started writing. It's a nice surprise for me that I didn't realize I would have connections with readers. I thought that's just a lovely, wonderful thing. It's the same as, like, I didn't realize I'd have connections with you guys, with fellow writers. That's a wonderful, like, accidental byproduct of this whole thing, this community aspect of it. But for me, the only reason I do it is for that first draft. So for those 5 years of work, for The Last Thing to Burn, it's all about those 3 weeks. That's what I do it for. And I'm just telling myself a story properly. And that is what I get a buzz off. It's that. And to be honest, like, the rest of it is nice. It's really lovely. But it's all about those weeks. I'm just kind of high off it. I'm kind of just excited like a kid again.
You out.
That's amazing.
Telling myself the story, that's the first draft. So that's the best part. Some authors love editing more than first drafts, but not for me.
No. I mean, I spend a lot of time on the edits going, oh, well, if you think so, fine.
I like the edit because it suddenly your book, you know, certainly with the editors I've been lucky enough to work with, it's made my books better. And I love that.
No,
the
for
fact
sure.
That, but I do know what you mean. There is nothing like, and it's the same feeling when I was young. Just that feeling of pure enjoyment of creating something. The power of creation is so magnetic, you know. And story, you know, creating a story, it's one of the most powerful things in the world. So
it is, and it's secret back then. It's my secret. Like publishing hasn't seen it yet. You know, the guy at the Guardian hasn't seen it yet. It's just me and my little weird idea, and it's just a nice little secret project, something that I can nerd out on, and I know the world that I've created better than anybody else, and that's just I'm going to spend some time in it. I'm basically a weird, socially awkward, shy kid in the Midlands again for a few weeks. That's why.
And does anybody see it at all before the 6-month hiatus?
No. I mean, not even me. So I literally put it away. I work on the next book, work on edits, copy edits, proofreads, publicity, whatever. And then after 6 months, I sit down, I read it, and I don't recognize a lot of it. Like I have a lot of distance from it because I wrote it in this fever dream state. And then it's actually pretty much there now. Like my first drafts are pretty clean now. They're pretty much the finished book, but I still tinker with them for a very, very long time. I probably could do it a lot quicker, but I'm just not happy with some stuff, you know, with a word or with a sentence. So I like to play with it before I give it to my wife to read. She's my first reader, and then my agent, and then my editor.
Amazing. Oh yeah, so cool.
Can I ask about Len? Because you've created a character who I imagine is infuriating, or I mean, in people's heads. And I mean, I read it a couple of months ago, and I still get a bit angry. How you, in a good way? I mean, I loved it.
And Chris, you're the least angry person I've ever met.
Jesus, Rob, you need to see him at school.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
I sat and read it in a day, and I just couldn't put it down. But I had to put it down at certain points because it was so intense. But I mean, that's such a skill on your behalf. But the character of Len, how did he change much from your first draft to how he is now?
No, he didn't actually. He didn't change from the voice I had in my head of him to the final book. He was very clearly like quite a faceless, brutal guy. I didn't want this to be his story in any way. I wanted it to be her story, but I did want to make him like, I didn't want to make him. He just kind of presented himself as that person. And a lot of that came through his voice, you know, through the way he speaks, which is the way a lot of people that I grew up with kind of spoke. Especially like I used to work on construction sites, on building sites in my summers when I was at school and university. And a lot of those guys spoke in that way, a very kind of clipped, shortened, simple way.
Yeah.
And he was just terrifying for me right from the beginning. And the level of control that he has over her, the way he films her and he dictates what they eat on different days of the week and how it's cooked. It's just horrific. And the way he, you know, she has 4 possessions left on page 1 of the book, and he will, if she does something that displeases him, he'll ask her which one of those 4 she wants to burn that night on the Rayburn stove. It's just horrible. It's very quietly menacing and terrifying.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that he, you know, as a farmer, he's always there. And he's always popping back in. And she's never got any privacy, never got any agency there. And everything that she can see, like it's been likened to Misery by Stephen King and Room by Emma Donoghue. But the difference is that there, the people who are captive, they can't really see out very far. Whereas with our main character in this story, she can see for miles. She can see 6 or 7 church spires, which are supposed to represent safety. She can see a road with trucks all day long, but she can never get there. And what is more, everything that she can see, that whole view is his land, sculpted by him. Everything up to the horizon is his. And he's around there, you know, looking back at her from his tractor, from his combine. So yeah, he didn't change from the first draft to the final book. And I was happy when I finished that I would never have to write him again,
Okay.
because I had kind of a knot in my stomach writing this book, and
I can imagine.
yeah, I was very tense writing it, and he's a nightmare of a man.
Because you must, and now that it's been out for a couple of weeks, you must have commentary from, friends or family, or I always get it from my mum, who just goes, "Is all of that darkness in you?" And you're like, "No, it's out. It's on the page. It's not real. I made it up. It's a story." But you must have people kind of going, "Right, who is that? Where's that come from?"
I get a few comments like that, but I think fundamentally, like, this book is tense and nightmarish, but it's also really about love and hope and family and resilience. Yeah. So hopefully it doesn't look like I'm some kind of really dark individual, like, because especially the first half is very dark, but then there is that light, and there is that, and it's not very bright for much of the book, but it's always there. There's always a hope, or there's always comfort from her reading of Mice and Men, or there's always comfort from her revisiting her memories of home, and hoping for a better life in the future. So hopefully it's not all too bleak.
No, it's not. It's not at all. It's just harrowing in its honesty, really, I guess.
What it made me think about as well was the amount of hope that this might give to other people as well. In a sort of, or who've experienced something similar or something like that. This gave a voice, and used that word agency as well, to people who've been perhaps in the same situations as because I don't want to give anything away about, because the name issue is one of the protagonist is one that I don't want to give away, and it's usually me, Will, that messes up and gives away a plot spoiler on the podcast. So I don't want to do that 100%. Today, because so much about this is enjoying the tension ride of this book. And so many times, like when I was reading it, it was like, oh no, please, I've got to shut it. Don't want to know what happens next. No, thank you. I can't remember where I was going. What was I talking about?
You were talking about it maybe being relatable
helping,
to
people.
Helping.
Yes.
And maybe, well, not directly, but it's come up. I've had a few very lovely emails and letters from people who work around that kind of world in terms of counseling, psychiatry, people who work for charities and NGOs who deal with it. So that was very kind of emotional reading those letters.
I can imagine.
But I think, and on another level, maybe not directly related, but anyone who's been in a kind of a domestic setting where you're kind of in a place with someone who's trying to control you is terrifying, and that is happening all over the world right now.
Yeah,
there's a lot of domestic situations which look fine from the outside, where one person is trying to control the actions of the other, and it's a horrific situation.
Definitely.
Absolutely. The just as a slight, it made me think of something. I will have to take this slight anecdote out, I think, Sean, or I don't know which one I was going to edit it, but I grew up around farming communities myself, and that you very deftly embodied that set in ways kind of thing that some farming communities just have, and this had taken being set in ways to a certain very dark level, which I found very I really enjoyed it, because I'd never subscribed to that. I wasn't a farmer myself, I'd just been around it, so I really related to it.
This is a tale of the supernatural.
The Tapes, a podcast of the uncanny.
Do you believe in ghosts?
Join me, host Christopher Goldie, and guests as we discuss the best in unsettling television and film.
Who is this? Who is coming?
Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Search for @TheTapesPod, part of the Pod Dojo network.
But those worlds are real, and I drive down the Fens. I drive through the Fens a few times a year, going seeing family, or at least we did when things were normal. And the bleakness of that landscape is so true to life in this book.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's a very special place. It's kind of the edge of the world, you know. It's land that never used to be land, and it's where I'm from, and it's weird, and it's quite eerie at nighttime. The skies are enormous, and the mists, and it's very, very bleak. And there's also, you know, there's pockets of the UK where a certain kind of masculinity still prevails, still exists. Stuff that, you know, we kind of saw when we were growing up with grandfathers and stuff, and people and neighbors or whatever. And maybe it's dying out now, but there's just remnants of it in some places, and it can be quite dark, you know.
Yeah.
And a lot of it isn't. It's just a typical kind of unemotional or emotions are unavailable to them or whatever. They're difficult to express. But sometimes it is quite scary for other people when people are like that.
Yeah. The last time I'd read about this area of the world was with Eva Dolan's Zigic and Ferrara series, which was,
She's
again,
great.
she's brilliant, isn't she? Yeah, again, so well done. But it's that it harks back to that sense of place, which is whenever I think about your books, Will, I think about such a vivid sense of place that, you know, whether it's the forests around Gavrick or Gavrick itself or the fens here, which I don't want to go back to. Thank you very much. So how do you, when you're concocting those worlds, how do you go about it? Is it just a very natural thing to you, or?
I don't know if it's natural, but it's really important to me. It's what I love to read. It's one thing I love to read. I love the characters, and I love sense of place. And I love atmosphere. So yeah, it's a big part of what I visualize for all those months before I start typing. It's what a place feels like at different times of the day, what a particular room might feel like when the light comes in from a particular angle. I just try and kind of exist in that fictional landscape or in that fictional building for a while, and try to understand it, what it smells like, what it feels like, what it sounds like, so that it reads authentic, hopefully, when I come to write it. And yeah, I just love that. I love, you know, it comes from reading, I don't know, that sweet shop in Boy by Roald Dahl as a kid, you know, with the big glass jars, and it comes from reading Trainspotting and being in those squalid flats, you know, when I was like 15. I read that. It's just writing where you get immersed in a story and you feel like you're there. Just, it's very powerful, more powerful than most other forms of storytelling. So it's what I like to do. And it's one of those things where I don't want to dissect how it's done, how other people do it, how I do it. It's just something I love consuming as a reader, and it's something I love to create when I'm writing.
So in your visualization process, which can take months before you start to draft, do you take yourself away for certain hours? I mean, obviously you're in an isolated environment anyway, but you have family. So do you take yourself away for hours and sit and just consume yourself in that world, or does it bubble in the background?
I don't know. I mean, I think I would get divorced pretty quickly if I took myself off too often to think, you know, like an artist. It's more that when I pick up my boy from school, he goes to school in the next forest over. It's like a half an hour drive. That's when I'm thinking, you know, I'm visualizing. Because I love that thing about driving where you're using a particular part of your brain to actually keep the car on the road. And the rest of your brain can think through a scene or think about a character's background. I just like that. And I often speak out loud in the car, like in clips of dialogue, or talk through a scene so I understand how it moves forwards. So yeah, it's driving. It's when I'm chopping wood, which I have to do a lot. It's when I'm taking a shower. It's especially when I'm going to sleep at night. Like many writers, I think, you know, you closing your eyes. I always think about a scene in a story. I always think about, and that sometimes goes nowhere, or sometimes I can kind of work something out, or I see something that's going to happen. And same when I wake up in the morning, I'd rather not just like leap out of bed. I'd rather have 10 minutes where I'm just thinking about a scene, because it's just, I don't know what happens to your imagination at that point, but it's very cool. Thank God that it does that. It's that borderland between wakefulness and sleep. All your boundaries drop away and you can think up some weird stuff.
Yeah. When I was a kid, when I was little, like sort of 6, 7, 8, my mum used to wake me up. I lived in South Africa, so school would start at 7, but because I did sport at competitive level, I had to be there at 5. So we would have to be awake at early doors. and it would always pull me out of my sleep. And she said there was this one time when I just said, you have to just wait until my soul is back in my body. And I was probably 6 when I said it, and it's one of those things, but it stuck with me, because that's my time for thinking, when I'm going down or coming back up again, and it's sort of like everything's out in the ether, and you can pull it back to you and pull it into a rational formed space, or it can float off to wherever it needs to be. But this little thing lying there going, give me time for my soul to come back into my body.
Yeah, I'd be absolutely
Emo
terrified, man. Yeah, emo kid.
My mum was like, all right, dear, you need to be up in a minute. Get your ass out of bed. Stop being such a drama queen.
Chris, do we have any Twitter questions?
We've got some really nice Twitter questions, yeah.
Oh, nice.
Some nice philosophical ones. We'll start with Craig, who said, taking into account the amount of time and effort that goes into writing a book, is there preferred feedback one where the reader couldn't put it down and finished it in less than a day, or would you rather they savor it?
That's a good question. I mean, I have no opinion on this whatsoever. That's the reader's thing, man. It's nothing to do with me at that point. If a reader likes it, I'm super happy. If a reader really hates it, maybe I'm also quite happy. You know, as long as there's a reaction, this is a visceral, emotional reaction, I'm interested in it. Read it quick, read it slow. I don't care. You know, if you enjoyed it, I'm really happy. So yeah. Nothing to do with me.
Lovely. Stephen Keedy wants to know, when you left England, was it to strip life back to basics to make writing a priority, or was the writing sort of side project to what was happening in your life?
It was, so I was living in a 1-bedroom flat for many, many years in London with my wife, and we were just working our butts off like everybody else, and not being able to afford like a 1.5-bedroom flat ever, and definitely never like a balcony or a garden or anything like that. And I'm from the countryside, so I wanted some land. I wanted a simple, quiet life with good night skies, and I have a big dog. I'm a simple guy. So the London thing was good for 15 years, and I learned a lot, met a lot of interesting people, but I always wanted to go back to basics, back to nature. I feel very comfortable in nature. And my wife was Swedish, so we were like, let's try Sweden. And I said, let's try and live kind of off-grid in the woods in a very low-cost way. And then, because, you know, at that point I had a pipe dream that I might be a writer, but I knew that writers don't earn very much money. So I thought it might be a good idea to kind of, to kind of be able to live off very little. And we found this swamp. I found it on Christmas Day on the internet, and it was cheap. No Swedes wanted to live here. There was no road, no access road, no water, no anything, just a little hut with a compost toilet in another very small hut about 100 meters away. And I sent my wife the link, and she's a city person. She's never lived outside the city, so she was kind of terrified. But she read the link from the real estate agent, and instead of saying, you know, like you normally say, 3-bedroom house or whatever with southerly views in the garden, this just said great mushrooms, wild blueberries, and dragonflies or some nonsense like that. And my wife was sold on that. So we came over to on Ryanair back when Ryanair was like 10 quid a ticket. We flew over. The real estate agent was so shocked that anybody wanted to see this swamp that he picked us up from the airport, drove us here, and then there was no road, so he had to stop like 5 kilometers away. We hiked through the woods to get to this swamp and this clearing, and I fell in love with it immediately. I was like, I want to live here. This is the place to be. And my wife was cool with it and said, okay, let's do it. But if I'm scared living here with all the moose and wolves and stuff, then we're going to sell it and move to a town like sensible people. So that's the deal we had. And we've been here ever since. But in terms of writing, it just took me so long to understand that I wanted to be a writer. I'm not one of these people who's like, I always knew I was going to be a writer. I just had no confidence to be a writer. I never thought that was something for me. I was a big reader. I was the only kid in my family that was. You know, there were no books in my home when I was growing up. So I was the weird black sheep of the family wanting to read. And I was the one nagging to go to the mobile library truck to get some books out. And I was the only one to go to school past 16. So I was just the weird kid, and never thought I would be a writer until well into my 30s, when I started to have an idea maybe I wanted to write a story, but I didn't really tell anybody because I just thought they would think it was ridiculous. But yeah, I kind of had the idea that I wanted a quiet life or a simple life, and I love being here because I do have that distance from publishing, you know, and I like that. I think it's really healthy. You've got to give yourself a break from publishing and expectations and the commercial side of things. That's all like important, and it's all a big part of it, obviously, but you also need to put up a wall sometimes and just focus on your storytelling like you did when you were a debut again. And I think living here helps a little bit with that. The flip side is I spend a lot of time repairing my road and clearing ditches and stuff, so that's the downside.
But I suppose even that as well is like, it's those tasks you talk about that lets your mind tick in the background.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, actually, definitely that. Like I think, or I listen to an audiobook. Like when I was building the house, when I was putting the windows in, the final stage of putting the windows in, it's a big deal in Sweden. You need like triple glazing because it's minus 25 or whatever in winter. So I had to do it right. And I was listening to The Secret History for the first time by Donna Tartt on audiobook with her narrating as I was finishing that job. And that was really like, I remember the bits of the build work that I was doing when I was listening to different books. So I have these memories of stories attached to different parts of the house, which is quite nice.
Really That's so incredible.
That's really nice. The last question we had was from Stephen Gold, who said, should anything be taboo when writing?
I don't know. Who am I to say something like that? I don't know. I mean, I think you have to kind of be true to yourself and write what you want to write. And if it's too taboo, then maybe it won't get published. Maybe it won't get picked up. But maybe that doesn't matter. Maybe you've written it for yourself. I don't know. I mean, it's a big question. Who knows? I mean, I think it's good to step out of your comfort zone and challenge yourself a little bit. You know, I often think to myself just before I'm going to write a first draft, I often have this kind of mantra, you know, be a bit wild, like be a bit more wild, like just push it a little bit further. And if you think of authors or novels like Trainspotting or Frankenstein, you know, hundreds of years ago, or you think of Fight Club and things like that, they were pushing taboos. But I don't think you should do it for the sake of it. It has to come from the characters and the story. It has to be kind of authentic to what the message that you want to say and the world that you want to create. It can't be like, I want to shock people. It's not going to work.
No, because I think, I mean, and knowing a little bit about where Steve's coming from with that question, because we've published one of his books and he's pushing another one through to us in the next week or so, with a main character that's got quite extreme OCD, and that comes from his own background and whatever, and he's quite nervous about, is this something that people want to read about? And you're like, if you tell it right, people will read it. Like, there's no character that's off limits. There's no characteristic or personality type or event in life that's off limits if it's intrinsic to the telling of that story, and it will be with his. But you can see where that anxiety comes from, is that, you know, bestsellers don't have stories about X, and you're like, well, but then next week they might. So it doesn't.
Exactly. And who cares what's been written before? You just write. Yeah, you write your own thing and hope for the best, and nobody can tell what's going to happen.
Girls can't get on trains right now because, you know, lockdown. So.
Yeah, as long as you tell a story with empathy and it's kind of based in love on some level, then it's going to be fine.
Yeah, it's exactly that.
Words to live by.
At this point, we'd like to play a little game. It used to be One Star Superstar. We've moved it on to does the reviewer like something or not? So I've looked at someone who gave your book we should have a name for it really, but
I know we'll have to come up with one.
I think One Star Superstar still works, but we just have to credit the writing of
the
originator of the game.
We'll have a think about it during the week. So this person gave one of your books a sort of less than favourable review. So I've gone and looked at what else they've reviewed. So I've picked 2 items, and you have to tell me whether you think they loved it or hated it.
But they hated his book, right?
They weren't a fan.
They weren't. Okay.
You were in the very small minority, so you're fine. So this person, as well as reviewing your book, reviewed a Bismarck scale model. Did they like it or did they not?
I think they loved it.
You think they loved it? Cool. Rob?
I think pure hatred. I think so. They hated this model.
Okay. Sean?
The scale model of the Bismarck.
Yeah, like
I
you
think
glue it together.
love. I think absolute love.
Okay, so love.
Attention to
Rob.
detail was probably a feature of the review.
Okay. So it's by a maker called Tamaya, and they give it 5 stars. The usual Tamaya excellent. Looks tremendous and more robust than some other models. Why all modeling companies don't supply a single piece hull, I don't know. Clear instructions. 5 stars.
Excellent. Excellent.
I'm getting Nazi vibes from this person.
Yeah, there is a...
That's why I thought they would love the Bismarck. You know?
This is why. Is this the same person that gave Matthew Ross's book a 1 star and then sold it on eBay alongside all of its Hitler figurines?
Yeah, yeah.
No, this is a different
a little bit
person.
bizarre.
Jesus.
The second thing they reviewed
Attract him.
is a book called Extreme Sleeps: Adventures of a Wild Camper.
Ooh.
What are we saying?
I'm going to go hate, surely.
Will?
I don't know. I'll say hates it as well.
This is when we find out that Will actually wrote that book as well under a pen name.
I've been busy.
I think he loved it. I think it's all about the extreme sleep and Bismarck memorabilia.
Well, Extreme Sleeps got a review where the title is Extreme Cobblers, more like. 1 star. This was terrible. Honestly, all she does is go camping, but not on a campsite. What's so extreme about that? As long as you're not daft enough to pitch camp where you'll be found at pub closing time, what's the big deal? There are some good locations in the book, however. I'll be heading off to Sandwood Bay this summer.
Oh.
That ended well.
Well,
What a lovely person.
They've got a new holiday.
I'm sorry that COVID ruined his plans.
Yeah.
Yes, very much so. Very much so. See, that's the level of competition, Will, that that the people that you're attracting to your work.
Or not attracting.
Bismarck ships.
Yeah.
Or not attracting.
I like the fact that when Chris first sent me his, he was like, I've got a 1-star review and I'm very sad about it. It might have even been a 3-star. They said, don't fret, just look at what else they've reviewed. And the only other thing that person had reviewed positively was a set of jogging pants. Amongst everything else in the world that they'd bought off Amazon, jogging pants were the things that had won.
I love these people.
And the next one that hated your book was somebody who had an inflatable seagull that day.
Yeah. So
Wow.
Those things are
Big
better than my book. What are you reading at the minute, Will?
I'm reading the new Sarah Hilary standalone called Fragile, which is brilliant. I'm about 2/3 through, and it's very kind of gothic in a way, and really, 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 really good. I love the way she writes. But yeah, I'm just about to go into a first draft kind of next week. So I don't really read much when I'm in that first draft period. So this will be my last book for a while, I think.
Cool.
What are you guys reading?
I'm reading at the moment John Gardner's License to Kill, which is the actual, it's the movie novelization, but it's actually part of a continuation of the novels. I don't know how the legal aspect on this worked, but they obviously pulled it off. But the film License to Kill was heavily based on the book of Live and Let Die, in which Felix Leiter gets half eaten by a shark. And in this, because it's supposed to be in that same world, he's got to get eaten by a shark again. So this bloke has been eaten twice by a shark. He just cannot get any luck whatsoever. But I think actually John Gardner's one of the really good the guys who did a really good facsimile of Fleming's work as well. So yeah, I'm actually really enjoying it. And a nice because it's nothing like what I'm writing at the minute, which is nice. It's refreshing. What about you guys?
London Rules.
Oh,
Yeah, I
he's
am
still on his Mick Heron run. You've got
Yeah,
It's
to
London
literally-
Rules, by the way, folks.
Yes,
Yeah.
sorry.
an
London
audio
Rules, McCarran.
podcast.
I've read all. So this is the 5th in the series, I think, and I've read them all back to back. I literally can't put them down, so I'm flying through them. And I recently got Slough House in the post. So
Sly Heist.
it's not the way to advertise it. But yeah, I just want to get through them because I know that if I pick something else up, I'll just think I want to be reading this series. So I'm just going to get to the end and savor it and then move on. But yeah, what a
He's
book,
so
what a
good.
series.
He is so good, and such a
Yeah.
lovely man, like the loveliest man as well. I did St. Hilda's Crime Festival with him the year before last year, and have you heard about this festival in
Yes,
Oxford?
yeah,
It's such
yeah.
a strange little festival. They take over St. Hilda's College. Val McDermott kind of runs it. It's her alma mater, and it's brilliant. It goes really deep, and you have to present a paper, like a quasi-academic paper on a subject, on a different author, which I love because you're not talking about your own work at all, not any time. So I was talking about Miss Miller's Feeling for Snow by Peter Herg, and Mick was talking about, I can't remember, but we were presenting together, so it was like a lecture that we gave together. And he is just the nicest guy in the world, really lovely guy, and such a talented man.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love when you hear that people are cool, that you love their work.
It was there was a quiet man sat in the green room at an event when I think it was one of my first panel events, and I was introduced to him, and it was Howard Linsky who said, "Oh, have you met Mick?" And I turned, I was like, "Hi, Mick." Mick, and I recognized him straight away, like, oh my god, but he was just so unassuming, such a lovely guy, and funny guy.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that we all kind of sit there and go, "Oh, he was very unassuming," and you go, "Why would he be assuming?" We are all we all sit there and go, "I wouldn't assume." I'd sit in the corner quietly, no matter how many.
He's such a nice guy. What are you reading, Sean?
I have just finished reading some polish notes on Chris MacDonald's latest to be released, Roses for the Dead.
Ooh.
Because I don't get to read things for fun anymore. I get to read things that I'm going to publish.
That's a great title. I really like that title.
Yeah, it's a bad title.
It's a Funeral for a Friend song, and their singer, I contacted on Twitter just to make sure that it was okay, and he was so cool. And they were like one of my favorite bands growing up, and I've seen them tons of times, and he was
so
the
cool.
coolest guy. So yeah, it was really nice.
Can I just say, Chris, your title after this one I think is amazing as well. Am I not supposed to know about that?
I don't know.
I don't even know about that.
The crown one.
Oh, yes.
Okay, yeah.
I was like, I didn't know I was writing anything.
Tell Will.
Oh, it's called Hollow Crown.
I just think that's such a good title.
It's called what?
Hollow Crown.
Hollow Crown.
I like it.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Thank you. I can't
I
say
find
it, which
titles.
is...
I find titles difficult, so I'm impressed.
Oh, Bad Apples is a really cool title, man. I can't, and the cover as well.
Thank you.
Really looking forward to it. When is it out, by the way?
Bad Apples, that's Tuva 4. That's out in October.
Awesome.
Yeah, in time for Halloween. It's a very creepy Halloween-y type of book set in a new town, actually. A new town for Tuva. And it's a very twisted and spooky book.
Awesome.
That'd been excellent.
I
always think that if I could have come up with a thriller title generator that actually worked, I'd be a very rich man. You know what I mean? You're just like, shit. Listen, this is nonsense. Thank you very much for being with us, Will Dean.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been fun.
For writing the most incredible book that we all just texted.
Our WhatsApp was lighting up, wasn't it, while we were all reading it?
Yeah, we were all reading it.
I have to put this down. I have to put this down.
Yeah,
I picked it up again.
I would be amazed if you don't win some major awards with this, Will. I'll be absolutely amazed. So I'm going to put that right out there.
You guys are very kind. Thank you.
And thanks for hanging out. It's been wicked. It's been really
good fun.
Good to meet you.
Thanks very much.
Lovely evening.
Lovely to see you all.
Goodbye.
Thank you very much.
Goodbye.
Yeah.